Hello, I'm Roger Anderson with Bremer Investments. When we think about our future financial security, we often do so in terms of how much we should save each month and how it'll add up in 10, 20, or 30 years. We know we are supposed to invest in IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, and any number of other confusing acronyms. Saving for the future is very important. But we also need to take it a step further and make our future nest egg as tax efficient as possible. Because it is not just what we earn, it's what we keep. Tax efficient investing falls into three different categories or buckets. The first is called non-qualified. It encompasses dollars outside of qualified retirement accounts. The second is pre-tax. It includes traditional IRAs and traditional pre-tax 401ks. The third is Roth, including Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks. Keep in mind that these are tax buckets, not investments. You could hypothetically own shares in a company's stock in each bucket. What we do have to be mindful of is how the underlying investment will be taxed annually and into the future. Each tax bucket has its own advantages and disadvantages. Let's walk through which situations make sense for each one. The non-qualified bucket is funded with after-tax dollars. It could include bank accounts, CDs, money markets, or investments in an individual or joint brokerage account. Typically, you will receive a 1099 miscellaneous income tax form each year because the assets don't receive any special tax treatment like IRAs or Roth IRAs do. However, the 1099 will be dependent on your holdings. If you own mutual funds or exchange-traded funds, you may get a 1099 showing capital gains because of the internal trading within the funds. If you own stocks that pay dividends or bonds that pay interest, the 1099 will show that amount. Here is the kicker. Long-term capital gains and qualified dividends are taxed at the capital gains rate. Those who are in the 12% regular income tax bracket will have a capital gains rate of 0. For those in the 22% bracket, the capital gains rate is 15%. Taxable interest income from bonds is taxed at the regular income tax rate. I'll speak more on how we take advantage of this in a moment. The pre-tax bucket will include assets going into traditional IRAs or 401ks that are funded with pre-tax dollars. These assets will grow tax-deferred on all interest, dividends, and gains. The assets become taxable at the time of distribution, usually in retirement and at whatever income tax bracket that you are in at that time. The third bucket, Roth, is funded with after-tax assets. These will grow tax-free on all interest, dividends, and gains. At the time of a qualified distribution, regardless of tax bracket, the assets come out tax-free. To take advantage of these tax differences, investments with high growth potential that throw off a little in the way of ongoing taxable distributions often work best in the first bucket of non-qualified accounts. An example of these would be index funds pegged to the Standard & Poor's 500 or non-dividend growth stocks. With these, it's possible the only taxes that might apply would be on long-term capital gains. Conversely, investments that are less tax efficient are typically best held in traditional IRAs. These might include high-yield bond funds or emerging market stock funds that do a lot of internal trading by spinning off taxable gains or dividends along the way. By strategically allocating your assets in the different tax buckets, you can not only align the overall portfolio with the proper risk tolerance, but do so in a way that may allow for more tax-efficient growth and distribution. Now that we understand the different tax buckets, we can start to see how taxes play a role both while you're accumulating your money and when you start to withdraw your money in retirement. By diversifying your tax buckets, you can meet your retirement income needs and mitigate taxes. Let's talk about a few strategies that depend on your age and income. We know that the pre-tax bucket is funded with pre-tax money. As a result, the IRS requires you to take a minimum distribution annually starting at age 72. If you have $1 million in IRA money, the minimum distribution is just below 4% of the account value. Once distributed, this can be enough of a taxable event to push you into a higher tax bracket or cause other unintended consequences such as higher Medicare costs. If you retire before age 72, one strategy may include taking money out of your traditional IRA each year to fill up the remainder of your tax bracket without going over and converting into the Roth IRA. While this does cause a taxable event in the year that you do it, the intent is to do it in a controlled fashion so that when you get to the age of 72, the amount of your required minimum distribution will be lower. This means less possibility of unintended tax consequences. It's also very important to understand the different income thresholds for each tax bracket. This will help you distribute money from all three buckets while ensuring your total income needs are met while mitigating taxable income. An example would be a retired couple married and filing jointly, whose income is approaching $80,000. At this level, the 12% tax bracket increases to 22%. Suppose at the end of the year, this couple needs a new roof on their home and they request a $15,000 distribution from their IRA. If they did that, most of that distribution will now be taxed at 22% versus 12%, or roughly $1,500 more in taxes. By diversifying tax buckets, they could take that $15,000 needed for the new roof from their Roth IRA and not push themselves into the higher bracket. Work in coordination with your tax preparer and financial advisor to understand the different income thresholds for each tax bracket. Thank you for watching today, and be sure to check out the other videos in our investment series.